man, I was reading some articles, and I think this explains some of it. It's definitely a generational thing, like what you were saying. So apparently, compared to millennials, Gen Z spends 40% less on alcohol, makes 5 fewer trips per year to purchase alcohol, and they're less likely to consume wine and beer regularly. And I 100% believe all of those things. Like,
This is modern day hippie. We are your homies who've done nearly every drug under the sun. Over 600 psychedelic trips and nearly every kind of bender you can possibly imagine have armed us with a universe of knowledge. I'm Yuki, and with my co-host Reggie, we talk about how we do drugs in a responsible, safe, and fun way to improve our lives. Before we dive in, and so we don't get sued, a quick legal disclaimer.
This podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. Our goal is to educate and inform others about the realities of substance use in an engaging and entertaining format. We share these experiences so you can learn from them without trying them yourself. By listening to this podcast, you agree not to attempt to recreate anything found in this episode or in any of our other content. We are not confessing to any acts stated in this podcast. The content in this episode should not be treated as factual or real in any way.
With that, we welcome you through our portal and hope you enjoy the show.
what's up, hippies? Hope you're having a vibey day today. Yuki, today when I was driving to work, I was listening to the radio because my phone died. I know, like, no one listens to radio anymore.
Dude, wait, that's actually not, hold on. Just pause for a sec. Like, I can't remember the last time I listened to the radio. That's crazy. Like, I can't even freaking remember.
I know.
Like, man. The last time I listened to the radio was, I mean, on a regular basis, it was like before I could drive because my parents would put that shit on in the car. And then I think there was one time on a road trip that, like, for whatever reason, I couldn't connect my cell phone to the car to, like, aux. So we listened to the radio, and we were in the middle of freaking nowhere, like Pacific Northwest. God. And the only radio station we found that had any signal was this radio station that all the guy played, like the guy who was, I don't know, like in charge of the station, like, you know, doing the DJing and the MCing. All he played was, I think it was Bob Dylan. Like, this man just loved Bob Dylan.
What is Bob Dylan? Is that like a country artist or something?
He's like one of the most famous musicians of all time. I haven't listened to him. I think it's like not quite country music, but I have friends who love him, and I know he's a legend. But this guy was obsessed with Bob Dylan, and that's all he played. So, sorry, you just took me back, bro.
No, you're good. Yeah, no, I haven't listened to the radio in forever. I used to listen to it every day when I was commuting, and I had an hour-long commute, and I was part of that commuter crowd where they had the really good shows in the morning. So I knew there would be something for me this morning, you know? But yeah, so I was like, fuck it, my phone's dead. Like, I want to bump to something while I'm driving. So I was listening to the radios, there were some jams on, and then the talk show hosts started coming on, right? Like their little show or whatever. And they were talking about how alcohol sales have gone down to like historic lows. I think they said since like the late 90s. And what the talk show hosts were saying, they think it's because of all the other substances people are doing and how alcohol is just not as popular. And actually, they said on the show, they were talking about beer specifically at first, right? And they were like, yeah, beer sales have gone down to historic lows. And in my head, I'm like, just like everyone else, I'm thinking, oh, it's got to be because of seltzers, right? Well, seltzer sales also have gone down. So it's like, I don't know, man, maybe this movement's catching on.
Dude, yeah, I think there are a lot of forces at play here, but honestly, in parallel with you hearing about that, I have actually seen a couple of articles in the past few days about specifically beer sales going down. So I found a couple articles that were saying that beer sales are at their lowest levels that they've been at in 25 years. That's literally since 1999.
Wow.
And dude, yeah. And what makes that even crazier is that in that same time, first off, all these statistics are strictly like US based. But in that same amount of time, the US population has grown by about 23%. So it's like, you have this like,
so they're really not selling as much.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you have the population growing by nearly like a quarter of what it was in the year 2000. And then at the same time, you have beer sales declining. On the other hand, I didn't see much about like seltzer sales or like other alternative beverages going down. In fact, a lot of the articles I was reading, they were citing how not even seltzers necessarily, but a lot of these like alcohol or alternatives are really just picking up more market share from beer. So we're talking a lot of more like sugary drinks.
Right. I
Things
read
like,
that too.
yeah, things like, your Cayman Jacks, your Twisted Teas. And I think like, I don't know if I'm thinking about it, like beers, if we're talking about, let's say roughly like 4 to 7% alcohol content drinks, like beer is like one end of the spectrum where it's, it's pretty like bitter. I feel like something we associate with our parents' generation kind of thing.
Right.
Whereas middle of the pack, you have more like seltzers, like they don't tend to be super sweet, but they're still like super bubbly and whatnot. And then you have your, all of these like malt beverages, which are things like Twisted Teas and whatnot that are just like, they taste like juice and they get you fucked up. And I think people like them for that reason.
Dude, what I read actually was that sugary drinks that didn't have alcohol, like the sales of those drinks were going up, which there's like a number of reasons that could happen. But honestly, I didn't even think about the population rise. Like that makes sense. Like that's probably a huge factor of why sugary drinks in general are selling more.
Are you talking just like soda and
Like
stuff
sodas
like that?
and stuff? Yeah.
Yeah. No, dude. So actually on that note, lately, like in my investing side of my life, I've been reading more about just like Warren Buffett and his investing philosophies. And one of his biggest investments has been Coca-Cola for many years. And
oh shit.
Right. Coke is like this like totally consumer product. Like you don't think much of it. But it's just like, it just grows a very steady, like couple of percents every year in terms of their revenue. Like part of it's population growth. Part of it is, they can probably charge a little bit more with inflation and stuff like that. So I think categories like that, just general consumer stuff, I think will like healthily just increase with population growth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'd say that's like pretty standard, but I think the alcohol, categories are especially interesting because, I was seeing that while beer sales have gone down, more like sugary things, like they actually take up more of the revenue for some of these big like alcoholic beverage conglomerates than their beers. So for example, like a fairly large beer company is called the Boston Beer Company. And so they're best known for like Sam Adams. Like that's like a pretty big brand in beer, but they own Sam Adams and they manufacture that, but they actually make most of their money now from Twisted Tea, which they also own.
Don't they own Truly's too?
Oh, I have no idea. They very well might. Yeah,
damn. I think it's them who owns Truly's. I'm not super sure though. But yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised by that. And most of the people I know would pick a Twisted Tea over a beer these days, like if they drink,
Yeah, that's fair.
But man, I was reading some articles, and I think this explains some of it. It's definitely a generational thing, like what you were saying. So apparently, compared to millennials, Gen Z spends 40% less on alcohol, makes 5 fewer trips per year to purchase alcohol, and they're less likely to consume wine and beer regularly. And I 100% believe all of those things. Like,
yeah, no, dude, I totally do too. And it's interesting because like, I think starting from the thought process of thinking about beer, it's like just things naturally kind of shift from one generation to another. So I feel like for our parents' generation, just like in that time frame was when like rock and roll came about and was this like cool, rebellious form of music. Now, when I think of rock, I think of like old timey, like parents shit, like to us, the rebellious stuff is like hip hop or like EDM or shit like that. And I think that in so many of these categories that, last like hundreds of years, just like alcohol or music, there are always these like natural shifts that happen over the course of generations.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if it's just like a trendy thing or if there's like more to it. One of the things that I saw in the article I was reading was that they said they asked like people from Gen Z like the reasons that they don't buy as much alcohol or like consume as much alcohol. And they said it's because of alcohol's impact on their mood, level of alertness, and image on social media. And it's that last one that kind of like got me thinking, like, I know like when we were in college, it was definitely stigmatized to post anything with alcohol on social media. And I'm sure it's even worse in high school, obviously, because it's illegal for kids to be drinking. So it's like, do you think people just have more of a stigma against alcohol now because of social media? Or do you think they're just more low key about it?
I definitely think you're onto something with that because I have these vivid memories of like when we were partying in college and you go to take a big group picture and everyone is like really on top of making sure there's no cans or cups in the picture. And like being that responsible for a group of people who are absolutely trashed always was like, it just always impressed me. And it's really funny you mentioned that because now, like, I don't run into that scenario as much in my adult life of just being drunk with a lot of people for personal reasons. But in scenarios like that where I have been in, like some people are still like, they have this habit of like hiding, like putting their drinks behind their back or like off to the side. And like, this is a setting where everyone is definitely like at least the age of 25. So it's like, there's absolutely no issues. But the fact that people have held on to that habit is really interesting. And I think the social media angle does make a lot of sense. And honestly, like just the risk of like people posting something stupid and it getting out has changed like our culture in so many ways.
Dude, yeah.
Yeah, you reminded me of there was this Reddit thread that was on the front page today where someone asked like for people growing up in the 80s, like did you actually just like go like leave home like all day long and just like fuck around and do whatever, like your parents like, you know, weren't on top of you or whatever? And it like all the top replies were like, yeah, like we literally like during the summer, during breaks from school, we'd be gone from the house all day. We'd be outside like getting into trouble. But like parents just felt safer about stuff back then. Like there wasn't as much fear and I think
there weren't as many
minds.
people to commit crimes. Like
yeah, that. And then also the point that, yeah, there weren't phones to be able to record all the stupid shit that kids in the 80s and whatever were getting up to.
Yeah, man, the phones changed the games. The cameras on the phones really changed the games. I remember when my ex in college, when we were dating, she was in a sorority and she posted like on her like Snapchat story that she was like at a bar or something and there was a drink in the photo and she got in like huge trouble. Like it was like a whole thing. And even when it comes to like the fraternities and stuff, like whenever like phones became like more people realized that everyone's posting things on their phones, like everything fraternities did became super low key. Like I don't know, man, it's great. Like the stigma is real. Like the stigma against alcohol, especially amongst the youth, is super real, man. Like
yeah, and even like some of these like bigger sororities that I have heard of, like they literally have officers whose jobs it is to police their members' social media. And if you post anything like alcohol related, like you will get like called out. Like they will like have a talk with you. And
dude, you can be like on probation, like depending on how strict
exactly.
They are. Like that's so crazy to me.
Yeah, no, dude, and see, like this is a big factor that I haven't even thought about. You know, like the big ones to me are things like other drugs becoming more like commonplace and like widely accepted, and just the cultural zeitgeist, and the fact that I think a big one that I think speaks to me a lot is that there's this general trend of, I feel like our generation just wanting to be, I think just like more like healthy or mindful or like in touch with themselves. Like, I don't think healthy or mindful is the right term, but it's like, I think, right, we're more aware of like mental health. We're more aware
what the
of
article
like,
was saying, impact on their mood, level of alertness.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
and alcohol is the worst for those things.
Exactly. Yeah. And honestly, I've been surprised by the number of conversations that I've had with friends of mine who like they've been, you know, drinking since college or high school. And I never thought they'd have any interest in stopping, but you know, they'll literally come up to me and be like, dude, like I really want to stop drinking solely because it makes me feel so shitty, like physically, mentally, you know, the day after and even beyond that. Like I've been pretty impressed. And I think part of that is also just hearing more stories about people who are making that move for themselves. Like whether it's like a buddy of yours, like whether it's me, or it's like, you know, some cities are opening these like non-alcoholic bars, like alcohol-free bars. Around,
and there's like there's raves now that you're not even allowed to have alcohol at them, right? Like,
I don't know about raves, but there is a festival that is very well known and well regarded where they don't allow alcohol on premises. And I have not been yet, but it is at the top of my list because that sounds fucking beautiful to me.
That does sound
imagine
beautiful.
Being in a crowd of people who are just tripping and rolling and vibing and not being like belligerently drunk.
Yeah, there's two things that come to mind when I start like thinking about what could cause like beer sales to go down. And I think one of the big things is that there's like this huge movement like on the internet, like on YouTube, and like part of it's led by these studies that have come out recently and propagated by people like Andrew Huberman that are showing how like there is no safe level of alcohol. Like even one drink is actually really bad for you. And so I feel like there's a lot more people who are a lot more aware of that. And then the second thing that we just can't overlook is that the legalization of marijuana across all of these different states in the US, I mean, that has got to make a huge difference in terms of like the options that people have on like at a party, for example, or when hosting something.
Dude, yeah. I mean, I completely believe it. And it's like, I used to have friends who I'm like, oh, like, you really enjoy drinking, and like, that's just like part of what you like to do. And it's neither like a good or a bad thing. It's just like, you know, I know you're someone who enjoys drinking, and I used to have very few like proper like stoner friends. But now I think I know people who like they smoke a lot, and they do it in a way where they're still, you know, like productive and good. And I think they're approaching it in a responsible way. Like they're not like giving up their lives to be stoners. But in the same way that, you know, like you might be an avid alcohol drinker, like, yeah, there's plenty of people out there who are avid smokers. And I just think those two things don't mix very well for most people. So it almost like, I think,
right,
forces you, like if you're going to be an avid fan of one of them, you're probably not partaking so much in the other one.
Yeah, they're actually like some of the more dangerous drugs to mix, right? Alcohol and weed. Like I think whenever you mix alcohol and weed, the weed makes it so that it's harder to throw up from the alcohol. So you can like really easily overdrink and then just like get poisoned, like alcohol poisoning.
Oh, damn. I didn't even know that. I've been super crossed once in my life, and I puked my guts out, and I was like, I'm never doing this again. These things are not meant to mix. Fuck this.
Yeah.
Granted, I overdid it on both of those substances, so would not recommend. Like, I have friends who enjoy being crossed like a little bit.
Yeah, I remember the first time that you got high off weed, and you were like, "Oh, I don't feel anything." Your first edible, rather, and you're like, "Oh, I don't feel anything." And just I made you take a shot of some liquor, like some vodka. Dude, or something.
You made me take multiple shots of Svedka. You're like, it was literally just the two of us in that house, and you're like, "Have a seat." I'm like, all right. And you're like, take a shot. And you're just like watching me take shots, bro.
Enhances it. But I don't think that's true. I heard that you get more high if you have some alcohol in your system, but like, I don't think it's the high that you want necessarily. Like, don't get me wrong, being crossed is like, it's like a thing, but it's not necessarily a smart thing.
I mean, it definitely gets you more fucked up. I don't know about high.
That's what I was aiming for, but probably doing it with Svedka is not a move.
I'm pretty sure that's all we had on hand.
It's just nasty. Like, yeah. Good times.
I will say, back when I used to drink, Svedka was my go-to, like bottom-ish shelf vodka. Not quite okay, like mid-shelf, but I don't know. I was a big vodka guy. At some point, even when I drank a lot, at some point I stopped drinking beer because I just like. I was also like lifting and like getting fit and shit at the time. I just didn't want the calories. So my thing was, I want 100% of my drinking related calories to come just from the alcohol itself.
Oh shit.
From carbs and shit. So at some point I would just like drink straight vodka, or like vodka with soda. And so I tested a lot of vodkas, and in that like price range, I didn't mind Svedka that much. And I preferred it. I think I liked it more than Tito's. I liked it more than, I don't know, whatever else was in that category. I don't know if I can remember.
I don't remember liquors like that.
Yeah.
I thought when you said the whole lifting thing, I thought you were about to talk about how beer has a lot of estrogen, like it creates a lot of estrogen or something in the body. Because that's like another like thing about beer is that it will raise your estrogen levels comparable to like tofu. Some people say more than tofu. Obviously that is like controversial, but like in the lifting community, there's a bunch of people who will like always tell you to avoid beer because you don't want like that in your body.
Damn.
And usually they're saying to drink like certain liquors, right? Which is a little different than what we're saying. It's not like just to not drink, but still a similar thing. And it could also explain at least a small portion of beer sales going down.
Dude, that's funny. I'm like picturing a gym bro being like, "This is a manly liquor." Drink this. Yeah, I don't know.
It's
No,
funny
but
that beer is like manly, but it's like it's the one that has the like makes you the most feminine in a sense, right? Like that's not a fair way to put it by any means, but you get what I'm saying.
dude, yeah, I had no clue. That's actually pretty funny and ironic. And actually, on the note of like liquor sales compared to beer sales, I did find a few sources saying that in the time that these beer sales have declined, that sales of spirits, so like liquors, has actually continued to go up. And this isn't so much from like this batch of articles that I found, but I remember from, I think at some point in 2023, I think tequila was like the fastest growing alcohol category like out there at that point. And so I think people are definitely exploring more like liquor options. I think it definitely helps that like every celebrity nowadays has a freaking liquor brand.
For real,
And
dude.
I've just seen that like a lot of them tend to be tequila and gin like more recently. So like, I don't know, fucking like Ryan Gosling and The Rock and shit like that. Like they all have tequila and gin brands for the most
That's
part.
crazy to me that they have like how does that work?
Hey hippies, we hope you're enjoying the show so far. If you're listening to this on Spotify or Apple Podcasts and are having a good time, you need to come over to YouTube and subscribe to the Modern Day Hippie YouTube channel. We publish exclusive video content, and I promise you the experience is richer and more interesting. So if you're getting any value at all, stop what you're doing, open up the YouTube app, and subscribe at Modern Day Hippie. If you're watching this on YouTube and aren't subscribed yet, what are you doing? Go press subscribe. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the show.
You know what I mean? Do they just like partner up with a manufacturer and just put their name on it and make a percentage? Or like, do they actually like put in work and design like something that they want to drink, you know?
Yeah, it can definitely be either end of the spectrum. Like I know a little bit about this industry, not so much like strictly liquor, but just like celebrity led brands. And generally it's like they'll find a product that's already being produced that they like, and then they'll just private label it and put their names on it. But I do know some of these celebrities, like they have kind of gone on record and saying that like they did work with the, in this case, the distillers of like a tequila, let's say, to get a taste that they really liked. But generally it's like the value that they bring to that business is just the name recognition and the distribution. Exactly. Cause then there's almost always like a more like operating or business partner on the other side of it. That's, you know, playing more of the role of like a CEO or an operator, and probably, you know, taking a fairly even split of the revenue.
I would imagine, right?
Hopefully.
I'm sure every deal is different, but that reminds me of have you heard of Prime?
Oh yeah, dude, Prime has popped off like crazy.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me. Like they really just took two giant influencers, put their like faces and names all over this thing, got them to promote it, and now it's like so blown up. Like I was at the grocery store the other day and I saw this kid, he was probably like 10 years old or something, like going up to his mom and like showing his mom like a bottle of Prime, like there's like a green one. He's like, "See, mom, isn't it cool?" And the mom's like, "Yeah, sure, honey." And like I'm just like, and then she like they put it in the cart. I was like, "Damn!" Like,
yeah,
that's just
no, dude,
I guess that's just how it works. Like,
dude, that's exactly how it works. No, yeah, and I remember, I think again at some point in 2023 reading that Prime was like probably the fastest growing just like drink brand of all time. Like they absolutely popped off, and dude, like good for them, honestly. But the fucked part is that Prime is actually really bad for people and especially children, because one bottle of Prime has literally like 3 to 4 cups of coffee worth of caffeine. Like straight up, it's like really? 300 like milligrams or something like that.
I didn't even know they had caffeine in Prime. I knew it was bad for you. Like I saw a bunch of like people like debunking like all the claims, like like the electrolyte mixture is like not good for actually doing sports, but like since they have more essentially salt in it, they could say they have more electrolytes. It's like a pretty marketing genius, honestly. Like, and kids will fall for that for sure.
No, exactly. Yeah, and that's the fuck part is like their target market is low key like to kids who watch like Logan Paul.
It's like the vaping industry, bro. It's just so fucked. Like,
yeah,
cereal industry. Honestly, like most industries probably like even at least subliminally like target kids. Like those are customers for life, right?
Yeah, definitely customers for life. I don't know if I would say most brands target kids, because there's a lot of boring
fair.
shit out
Yeah,
there
that's
that
fair.
kids don't care about. Like kids don't care about eggs or brands of milk or
Yeah, true.
shit like that. But I mean, I feel like, dude, have you ever noticed when you go grocery shopping, the aisle that has like the brightest colored packaging is usually like the candy, the chips, the chocolates, like, and it's like part of it is appealing to like childlike desires, but then it's also just, we all have these internal like cravings for just like our bodies crave sugar, like whether we like that or not. That is just a fact of our biology.
Dude,
So,
yeah. It's pretty crazy.
yeah.
Even
And
like
like,
you've seen like the studies on like the way the brain reacts just by looking at like a picture of a donut or something sugary or something. Like it's
yeah,
it
dude,
makes
it's
you really
crazy.
wonder how in control you really are of the way that you feel or are thinking about things.
Yeah, 100%. And to bring this back to alcohol, like I like alcohol taps into that, but I think to an even stronger extent, right? Like you see all of these ads for beers or liquors, and it makes you just inherently associate those substances or even specific brands with just like a specific setting, a specific vibe, a specific energy. It's like, oh, drink this beer like when I partied, like growing up in college or whatever, and now I associate it with that. And it's just like, it's like those memories and those urges on top of what I think is more of a like chemical addiction almost than most people are
Yeah.
willing to admit.
But hey man, they're losing the battle. I wouldn't say losing, but they're no longer thriving the way that they were like the rest of our lives, frankly. Like
Yeah.
You're at the club and the music is thumping, but you've got nothing left in the tank. So what do? Sniff some cacao. Yep, you heard that right. Sniff some cacao. It's the hottest new trend in the club and party scene. One bump-sized sniff of raw chocolate powder contains the caffeine equivalent to a half cup of coffee, and boom, it hits instantly. And the best part is you can now sniff cacao anytime, anywhere. Right out in the open, in front of the DJ booth or the stage, even at the VIP table with your friends. Now, how does that happen without drawing unwanted attention? Well, Snowgo's spring-loaded bump straws make it possible. These classy, triple mirror polished bump straws are the safest, most discreet way to enjoy sniffing cacao. In fact, you've most likely already seen people wearing Snowgo's bump straws as pendants around their necks without even knowing it. Discover why sniffing cacao using Snowgo bump straws is being called the biggest revolution in partying since the invention of rock and roll. Jump on over to snowgostraws.com to learn more. That's SNOGOSTRAWS.com and use discount code MDH25 for 25% off your entire order.
No, dude. And actually, something interesting I found in these articles about the beer sales declining was that trend is only happening in the US. That in
really?
the rest of the world, beer sales are continuing to remain strong. Essentially, there's no like strange changes in the trends in the rest of the world. And so that definitely makes me think that this is largely a culturally driven phenomenon, for some of the reasons that we talked about. And I'm sure several others that like we just have no clue about. And that, I'm wondering if like the rest of the world will eventually like end up on that same trend, who's to say a few years, even a few decades from now.
Dude, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Like in Europe, like they take so much pride in their beer and they have such a culture of drinking beer and stuff, So it's like I just don't see it happening. Like I don't see like the next generation like giving that up just because it's like so ingrained in their culture. But I don't know. I could be wrong. Maybe if psychedelics become more widely available, then people will change their minds. So
yeah, I mean, I definitely don't think that's happening anytime soon in the rest of the world. I mean, like around Europe and Asia, like smoking is still super common.
like
And even
cigarettes, you mean? Or
yeah.
Sorry, that's
smoking
wild
cigarettes.
to me that people still smoke that
Dude,
shit.
yeah, no, and actually, I have like homies who live around Europe at least, and like a few of them like really want to not smoke cigarettes, but it literally affects their like social lives. Like it's such
Wow,
a
really?
social event to go out and smoke. Dude, it's actually my buddy who was in college in France. He was telling me that anytime a class is longer than like, I don't know, like 45 minutes or an hour, that in the middle of the class, they have a 7-minute break because they've timed it that it takes exactly 7 minutes for you to walk outside the classroom, smoke a cigarette, and then get back into the classroom.
Oh my God, bro. It
And so
probably
this friend of
reeks in
mine,
those classrooms.
yeah. And so my buddy was like, yeah, I don't want to smoke, and like I can still go outside and, like sit with my friends who are smoking, but it's just like not the same. Like there's just, that sensation of like doing this like shared activity together, whether it's smoking a cigarette, whether it's drinking alcohol, whether it's doing anything else, like not drug related.
Damn, dude. Don't get me wrong, man. I'm all for like the occasional cigarette, whatever. Like it could be a vibe in certain contexts, but when it's culturally ingrained like that, and like you're almost like pressured into an unhealthy lifestyle, like that's systematically a problem. Like I would hate for my future kids to have to deal with something like that. So like I'm glad like America's not dealing with that as much, but
yeah,
I
mean,
man.
dude, who's to say what's going to change for like the next generation? I mean,
For real,
things that
yeah.
die down could come like rushing right back. Because again, like I'm really starting to appreciate how much just like a difference in generations can make, all else being equal. Like strictly because your parents do something when you're a kid, you automatically think that it's not cool. Like I swear that it's like psychologically hardwired. And so I feel like you could just have this like flip flopping almost, or even
Right.
you see in like
Skipping a
these
generation.
trends, like I feel like, I don't know. I know very little about like fashion, but I feel like we're kind of in this trend of like vintage is really cool. Like people are thrifting these like vintage like jackets and pants and shit. And like right now that's a vibe, right? But it's like, a couple years ago that was like not really a thing.
Yeah,
I'm sure several years from now it'll also go back out of style. Like these are all just like trends and fads and shit, and that happens at different lengths of time as well. I think even with things like alcoholic beverages, and yeah, man.
Dude, I was thinking about this the other day, like laying in bed, because my coworker was telling me how like their daughter, who is like a young teenager, they like their whole generation dresses like very 90s, like, and I'm just like, like that's interesting because like obviously the 90s were a long fucking time ago. Like they weren't around for the 90s, but at the same time, when that generation was really young, like they probably consumed media from like a similar era. Like, you know what I mean? Like, because that's just like what was available to them when they were really young. So like, is there some kind of like subliminal nostalgia or like I was really thinking about the concept of like what is considered attractive. You know what I mean? Because it's like,
yeah,
if you grow up watching TV and like all the people are portrayed a certain way, like attractive people are portrayed a certain way, then like when you grow up, like you're probably going to have that be more of your type, right? So it's like I feel like that's happening with fashion, honestly, and that could explain in my head some of the flip floppiness and this weird generational stuff.
Dude, yeah, you want to hear something crazy about the attractiveness thing?
Oh yeah, what's up?
Yeah, so my girlfriend knows much more about this than I do. So apparently there are trends in just what is considered attractive, like just on people's bodies. So it's like right now the trend is that like girls that are like curvier and have like bigger boobs and butts are considered like more attractive, like even from like a like commercial modeling and like
oh really? I didn't know it was
like professional perspective as it comes to the way that like mostly women look. And even like the way that like, the work that certain people get on their bodies, like, their lips, their noses, whatever. Like those go through trends as well. And it's just like, I think I've seen this happen because I don't know if we told this story on the pod yet, but I was at some party in LA years ago, and it was one of my first times doing like a lot of ketamine. And at some point I look around the room and it's this like bougie party in Beverly Hills. Dude, I swear every woman in that room was the same. Like they were like a clone of each other. Like they were the same NPC. They all had long hair, brunette, like very large lips.
Oh my gosh.
Like
like the Kardashians.
Like... No, literally. Yeah, no, dude. And like 100% the Kardashians have like, set that trend of like that era of conventional attractiveness. And I'm sure, a few years from now, like there'll be something fairly different. And it's like, to me and you as dudes, like, we're just not clued in enough into this stuff to notice. But dude, like women notice, like 100%. Or even like even more extreme, that back in like medieval times, like people who were fatter and had like more weight on them were considered more attractive because that meant that you were you could afford to feed yourself better, which indicated that you're wealthier, and like wealth and power is very much like a factor in attractiveness.
Dude, yeah, there's a lot of examples like that, honestly. Like darker skin in like a lot of Asian countries like means that you're poor because you're working outside.
Exactly.
And then small dicks in ancient Greece was like preferred because big dicks were like what monsters had or some shit.
So what?
Have you heard of that one?
No, I haven't.
That's why all the statues have little pee-pees, bro.
Wait, who said they were little? I thought they were normal. All right. I think that's a good note to end the episode on. But thank you guys for listening, and we hope you have a great rest of your day.
You've been listening to Modern Day Hippie. As you exit the portal, we have just one small ask of you. If you learned something new today, had a laugh, or resurfaced a drug story of your own, we want to hear about it. Drop us a comment on YouTube and show us some love on your favorite podcasting platforms. Internet algorithms really dog on us because of the topics that we discuss, so your support goes even further here than you might think. We'll catch you next week.